This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Telly Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Well, the region is bracing for significant impact and considerable difficulties as President Donald Trump confirms a 25% tax on foreign-built vehicles and auto parts from the 2nd of April. Beijing pledges to resolve disputes through dialogue amid the brewing trade war with Washington as the world's number 2 economy woos fresh foreign investment at the Boao Forum in Hainan. And the death toll in South Korea's southeast rises to nearly 30 in what's now the country's largest and deadliest wildfires on record. And Seoul says it is evaluating Pyongyang's military capabilities after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un supervised a test of suicide drones featuring AI technology. Also in East Asia tonight, China's dominance of the world's supplies of rare earths may be coming to an end. We'll delve into why the country is sounding the alarm now and the implications for the global race to secure these critical minerals. Japan has warned of a significant impact on global trade after U.S. President Donald Trump announced another round of trade tariffs, this time on auto imports into the U.S. Tokyo has called the move extremely regrettable. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says his country is putting all options on the table and reviewing an appropriate response.
アメリカに対する投資も屈指のというか1位の投資をしておると。そうだとすれば本当に全部の国同じでいいのかということはきちんと申し上げておかねばなりませんし、今までも申し上げてきたところでございます。
米国政府による広範な貿易制限措置は、日米両国の経済関係、ひいては世界経済や多角的貿易体制全体等に大きな影響を及ぼしかねないと考えております。
South Korea's trade ministry says its auto companies will likely face considerable difficulties and that it's planning an emergency response by next month. Well, the ministry is also seeking to consult the U.S. government to minimize the impact. Washington is set to impose a 25% levy on all cars and light trucks not made in the U.S. The levy will also apply to auto part imports and come on top of tariffs already in place. It's set to take effect on 2nd of April, when broader announcements on tariffs are expected. The levies widen the global trade war started by President Trump since his return to office. The biggest car suppliers, including Japan and South Korea, which are U.S. allies, will likely suffer the most. And for more, CNA's Han Yuguan, he joins us live now from Shanghai. Yuguan, first up, what's been the response in China and, of course, the potential impacts on autos?
Well, this issue of the auto tariffs from the U.S. was raised during the regular Ministry of Foreign Affairs briefing today. And the spokesperson started his reply by essentially saying that they have noted that the United States' major trading partners have already responded. He went on to repeat a statement often repeated by Chinese leaders that a trade war and tariff war have no winners and that no country has achieved development nor prosperity through tariffs. He added that the actions of the U.S. violates WTO rules, undermines the rule-based multilateral trading system, and harm the common interests of people around the world. What's more, he added that they do nothing to resolve the Americans' own problems. Now, it's worth noting that April's 25% tariff on auto vehicles would, barely make a dent for China's auto exports. That's because China is a leader in electric vehicles, or EVs, and Chinese EVs have already been slapped with a 100% tariff since last September. Now, between 2023 to 2024, China's vehicle exports to the U.S. did grow by about half, but that still accounts for just 1.8% of China's auto exports in 2024 and 0.4% of all of China's auto sales last year. Otelli?
Right. Also something else to highlight, which is top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi actually met his French counterpart in Beijing, right, ahead of those EU trade minister landing in the country. Then, of course, the next question is there then a pivot to the European bloc amid all these global economic uncertainty?
Well, the US tariffs that we just spoke about on autos will definitely hit European autos quite hard. If anything, you could say there's a European pivot from the US to China, rather China pivoting to Europe. During the meeting between the Chinese foreign minister and his French counterpart in Beijing, their discussion covered a wide range of topics. According to the reports, both countries expressed intentions to deepen cooperations in sectors such as agriculture, nuclear energy, aviation, aerospace, artificial intelligence, the digital economy, and green hydrogen. Additionally, they aim to encourage Chinese investments in France. After the meeting, Wang Yi also said that China and France would hold three high-level dialogues on strategic, economic, financial, and cultural issues this year. Oteli?
Well, Yu Guan, just hang in there. We've got more to chat with you on China's Premier Economic Forum next. And I'm talking about the Boao Forum that's taking place right now in China's Hainan province. Now, in the opening address, China's Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang says that global uncertainties are rising, stressing that Beijing will resolve disputes through dialogue. Now, his speech comes just hours after President Trump unveiled his new auto tariffs. Once again, let's bring back our Shanghai correspondent Tan Yu Guan. Yu Guan, walk us through some of the highlights from the Chinese Vice Premier's opening address.
Well, in what's by now a tradition for mainland Chinese leaders, Vice Premier Ding included a statement previously made by President Xi Jinping. The Vice Premier Ding basically kicked off his speech by recalling a keynote address President Xi made at Boao a decade ago. At that time, President Xi said, and I quote, that only when the world is good, right, can Asia be good, and only when Asia is good can the world be better. Now, in that spirit, Vice Premier Ding called for the world's free trade system to be safeguarded. Although Vice Premier Ding did not directly refer to the US President Trump's moves to impose tariffs on auto imports or other tariffs, he did voice his clear opposition to protectionism. Let's take a listen.
我们要共同维护自由贸易体制，坚持开放的区域主义，坚决反对贸易投资保护主义，用好东亚、亚太等区域合作机制，高质量实施 RCEP， 推动签署中国东盟自贸区3.0版升级协定，推进区域经济一体化和互联互通。
Other than safeguarding free trade, Vice Premier Ding also made 3 other proposals. First of all, strengthening the Asian family by enhancing trust through promoting the core Asian value of consensus-based decision-making, that is, accommodating and respecting the core interests and concerns of all parties. Number 2, he asked for the promotion of shared prosperity through mutual benefit and cooperation, particularly in the area of technology. Lastly, he asked for the safeguarding of peace in Asia. If you listen to his speech without prejudice, there's, of course, a very sharp contrast to the rhetoric we've been hearing from Washington of late with regards to imposing tariffs on imported goods, etc. Now, Oteli?
Thanks so very much for that. Tan Yu Guan reporting to us live from Shanghai. Well, South Korea continues to battle wildfires that are now the country's largest and deadliest on record. At least 27 people have been killed, with authorities warning that the toll will likely rise. Now, the blazes have scorched nearly more than 35,000 hectares of land. Well, high winds and dry conditions fueled the flames that have been spreading rapidly since late last week. Entire neighborhoods have been gutted, roads cut off, and communication lines downed. Thousands of firefighters, soldiers, and other personnel have been deployed to contain the spread. Now, most of the casualties are residents, but at least 3 firefighters have died. A pilot also lost his life yesterday when a helicopter crashed during a water drop operation. The wildfires have spread to multiple towns across the region. Earlier today, authorities issued more special disaster warnings, including in the southeastern coastal town of Yeongdeok. And for more on the spreading wildfires, CNA's Lee Myung-suk joins us from Andong City, one of the worst hit areas. First up, Yoon-suk, emergency warnings imposed in more regions of South Korea, I believe. Is the fire being contained at all at this point?
Well, the authorities and especially the firefighters have been trying to contain it, but it hasn't been easy for them. Now, yes, I am here in Andong, and, I've been traveling around the city all day, and there have really been big and small fires throughout the city, and that's why I'm wearing a mask, because I can smell the smoke, and my eyes have been hurting all day because there is smoke around this whole place here in Andong. Now, if I can show you what's happening behind me, and I'm here because there are those kind of blazes and fire that has been occurring here in Andong and throughout this North Gyeongsang province. Now, small ones like that one, and there are firefighters around here trying to put that fire out. There are other ones around this area too earlier, but it's this kind of fire that's really making things very complicated, because once the firefighters are able to put that one down, then another one breaks out in another part of Andong and in here in North Gyeongsang province. And that's why the firefighters say that it's making this very difficult, and it really depends on the direction of the wind. And so every time the wind blows, there's some kind of an emblem, a spark that fly together, and then there's another fire erupting in that area. And that's why the acting president, Han Duck-soo, has designated 4 areas today as special zones, disaster zones, and that includes Andong City, where I am now. Now, also, this fire is not just here in North Gyeongsang province anymore. Now, this first started off when it broke in Sancheon County last Friday, and that spread to different areas here in North Gyeongsang province, but now it has spread to the southern side of Gyeongsang province as far as to Chiri Mountain, which is the second tallest mountain here in South Korea. Now, reports say that the firemen there were able to put that down, but there are concerns that there'll be more fire breaking out in different regions. And in fact, it has gone down all the way to the North Jeolla province, where there was a fire that broke out in Muju, which is known for its ski resort. Now, reports say that they have been able to put that down too, but authorities and, firemen continue to remain on alert because they don't know when it is going to break out and where it is going to break out. Now, there had been high expectations that there will be some rainfall today. Some said that it will be about 5 to 10 millimeters, but so far there's not even been a drop of rain. And right now there's no rain forecast in the coming days. And so it's going to be very difficult, but really, the firefighters who've been working around the clock are trying to do all they can to try and contain this fire, which is the deadliest here in South Korea.
Well, certainly very challenging times for the firefighters, and some have even lost their lives because of that. Now, also more residents requiring evacuation. Yoon-suk, is the country well prepared at all for this type of a disaster situation? Like, for instance, do they have enough supplies or aid?
Well, one thing very surprising about South Koreans, and they do it very well, is that they're able to get together as soon as there's a disaster here in South Korea, and that's what's been happening here too. And so, yes, they are well equipped for this. Apart from the big conglomerates and the companies that have come forward, making donations over $1-2 million, there are also individuals who have started to donate to the relief and recovery efforts here. And in fact, the Kakao messaging app has started this online donations, and so far there are about 5 billion Korean won. That's about $3.4 million US that have come in so far. And so they are fully equipped. I've been to the shelters, the temporary shelters, and they do have enough food and enough essentials, any of the necessities that the people need. And in fact, also, while I was driving around, I saw the NGOs and volunteers driving around in their cars to some of the villages where residents have gone back to, saying that they wanted to salvage anything that they can from the homes that have burned down. And so the NGOs, the volunteers here, they're all gathering together, and people around in the areas here in North Gyeongsang province have also come forward offering free supplies of water, free food everywhere you go. And so, yes, they are well equipped, and they're just waiting for this fire to be put out for good. But, talking to authorities and firefighters, they have no idea when this is going to end. And they're just hoping that it will end soon, or hopefully there'll be some kind of rainfall here in the coming days. But we'll have to wait and see.
At least happy to hear that everyone's pulling their weight, including yourself, Yoon Suk. Thanks so much for this report. Lim Yoon Suk from Andong City, which is one of the worst hit regions for the raging wildfires in South Korea. Coming up next on East Asia tonight, Japanese and South Korean markets tumble after Donald Trump's tariffs on car imports. We'll break down the market action. And Japanese markets are feeling additional pressure as Finance Ministry data indicate an outflow of foreign investment even before tariffs kick in. Hello again. Glad to have your company on East Asia tonight. Now, we've been talking in depth about the U.S. tariffs on imported vehicles. And Roland is here actually to look at all the market reaction. Roland?
Thanks, Otelia. As you can imagine, there has been considerable impact on Asian markets after Donald Trump slapped 25% tariffs on car imports. Major indices in the region ending the day in the red. Nikkei 225 in Tokyo is down 0.6%. The Kospi in Seoul down by 1.4%. Taiwan weighted index 1.4 in the red as well. Zooming in on the Japanese automakers, world's top-selling car maker Toyota saw its shares fall by 2%. Honda, the same, shedding 2.4% in value. And Nissan closing down the day about 1.5% in the red. Mazda and Mitsubishi taking the brunt of the losses. Mazda is vulnerable to tariffs as 81% of its cars are sold in the U.S. and are imported there. Some investors believe that the damage from the tariffs could put the company below market consensus profit estimates for the 2026 financial year. Mazda ended the day just 6%, as I said, in the red. And in South Korea, the market already under pressure from political uncertainty pertaining to the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. In such an environment, Hyundai ending the day 4.2% in the red. Kia Motors, which has a manufacturing plant in Mexico, dipping nearly 3.5% today. The stock futures in the U.S. have turned marginally green as investors weigh the events. The Dow futures marginally in the red, almost flat as we speak, but it's currently up by 0.2%. S&P futures is up by 0.1%, and the Nasdaq currently flat. Among American car makers, General Motors taking the brunt of the losses in pre-market trade. Now it's pulled down by nearly 7%, while Ford lost 5% at one point. Before paring some of those losses, is currently down by 3.7%. In Taiwan, the Deputy Economic Minister, Cynthia Chiang, says that they are considering a variety of responses to potential new tariffs from the U.S. Now, Taiwan runs a large trade surplus with the U.S., which surged 83% last year. The figure has sparked concern on the island that the U.S. may impose tariffs. The Deputy Economic Minister told Parliament that the island could increase energy imports and reduce Taiwan's own tariffs to balance trade. Ms. Chiang says that they have created a trade task force to draft preliminary plans to increase energy product imports from the U.S. A Taiwanese firm, CPC Corp, says that earlier this month that it signed an agreement with Alaska Gas Line Development Corp to buy liquefied natural gas. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva weighing in on U.S. tariffs during his visit to Japan. He questioned why U.S. President Trump would have taken such an action.
Pelo que eu conheço, os Estados Unidos importa muito carro japonês e também tem muitas empresas japonesas produzindo carro lá. Eu, sinceramente, eu não sei qual é o benefício de você aumentar em 25% os carros comprados do Japão. Ou seja, a única coisa que eu sei é que vai ficar mais caro para o povo americano comprar. É a única coisa que eu sei. E esse mais caro pode resultar no aumento da inflação. E esse aumento da inflação significa aumento de juros. O aumento dos juros significa contenção da economia.
Brasilia has been on the receiving end of tariffs from the US when Washington levied 25% on all steel and aluminium from Brazil. The Brazilian government has so far failed to renegotiate a return to a policy of annual tariff-free export quotas. The tariffs will only add to other woes in the Japanese economy. The finance ministry says that stocks in Tokyo saw a significant outflow of foreign funds in the week through to March 22nd. The outflow was before today's tariffs and could have been in anticipation of how levies will impact Asian supply chains. Foreigners sold Japanese stocks for an 8th consecutive week, just over $8 billion last week. In the previous week, there had been a net disposal of about $12 billion. At the same time, cross-border investors also divested Japanese bonds last week, snapping a 3-week buying streak. They offloaded some $12 billion worth of long-term bonds, marking their highest weekly net sales since the end of December. Additionally, they withdrew some $4 billion worth of short-term bills. Profits earned by China's biggest industries declined marginally in the first 2 months of the year, raising concerns for the economy as high U.S. tariffs loom. Industrial profits edged down 0.3% on year in the January to February period, after an 11% increase back in December. The decline comes as private enterprises in China chalked up lower profits in the first 2 months of the year. The Chinese New Year holiday usually triggers a slowdown in manufacturing and logistics operations. This pause could hurt profits for companies as well. China's Statistics Bureau officials warn that China's factories will face increasing external uncertainties in the future. Chinese markets largely shrugging off the car tariffs from the US, while US bank JP Morgan upgraded its outlook on China. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, the clear winner, ending the day up 0.4% in the green. Shanghai and Shenzhen also closing in positive territory. But the auto sector was not unscathed. The Hang Seng Automobile Sub-Index lost ground by more than 0.5%, and the yuan trading at 7.26 to the dollar. Now, China has been ramping up its debt issuance this quarter as it tries to stimulate growth. It has raised some $200 billion in sovereign notes this year, and that's tripled the amount the same period last year. Rajat Bhattacharya from Standard Chartered Wealth Solutions says that China's offshore sectors are set to outperform their onshore counterparts. He also highlighted other areas of opportunities amid rising US-China trade tensions.
There is this divergence coming through between the onshore and the offshore. The offshore sector actually is more the growth sectors that I talked about, the technology, communication services, consumer discretionary. They have almost more than 60% weight in the offshore index. And whereas in the onshore index, these growth sectors just a quarter of the weight. So there's this clear divergence between this growth weightage in the offshore sector. And there we see earnings outperforming, and which is why we are increasingly bullish actually on the offshore sector. In terms of broader China, because of this growth sector and DeepSeek and other AI-related driven earnings growth, we are actually also increasingly optimistic about China outperforming the rest of Asia going forward. Our strategy has been focusing on gold. Gold is the big one. It has done so well, as you know, and we remain optimistic. There could be some near-term pullback because it has gone up too fast, too far. So there could be a pullback towards, let's say, 2,900, but we would be buying that dip exactly because this tariff uncertainty is not going to go away. A lot of that is already in the price, as I mentioned, especially in Asian assets. But the way to hedge these volatility is having a sizable part of your portfolio in gold.
And I'll be back later with more on the fallout from CK Hutchison's decision to sell its Panama Canal assets. But for now, it's back to you, Kelly.
Thanks so very much, Roland, for that. We're going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, the global race for critical rare earth elements heats up. Can China maintain and leverage its edge in the supply chain? Plus, Seoul says Pyongyang has deployed more troops and weapons to aid Russia in the war against Ukraine. You're watching East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we are following. East Asia bracing for significant impact and considerable difficulties as President Donald Trump confirms a 25% tax on foreign-built vehicles and auto parts from April 2nd. Beijing pledges to resolve disputes through dialogue amid the brewing trade war with Washington as the world's #2 economy woos fresh foreign investment at the Boao Forum in Hainan. And at least 27 people have been killed as South Korea continues to grapple with wildfires that are now the largest and deadliest on record. Authorities warn of a rising death toll. More than 10,000 firefighters have been deployed. Now, new research shows that China could lose its leading position in the world's supply of rare earths in as little as 10 years. Well, scientists from the state-backed Chinese Academy of Sciences say that new mining frontiers in Africa, South America, Australia, and even Greenland could push China off the top spot. China accounts for about 60% of the world's rare earth supply today, but researchers warn this could drop to 28% by 2035. Well, the study published this month is a rare admission from China about its fragile leadership of the supply chain. It says that Africa and Australia will develop more high-potential deposits, while Europe will also join the rare earth supply chains. And the result is more diversified supply sources. Still, China's total mine production was 240,000 tons as of 2023, nearly 6 times that of its main rival America, the next leading producer. Well, rare earth minerals are not actually rare, but economically viable deposits are harder to find. Well, the real rarity is a complex process to separate them to produce magnets. And these magnets are critical in the production of your smartphones, EVs, wind turbines, for example.
They're used in all manner of electronics, technologies, and high-performance alloys. They're often described as the vitamins or the spice of industry because they have, over the past several decades, they've enabled, through advances in material science, our technologies to get smaller and faster and stronger and more resilient.
To shed more light on this, let's bring in Dr. Philip Andrew Speed. He is a senior research fellow at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies China Energy Research Program. Well, thanks very much, Dr. Andrew Speed, for joining us this evening. First up, thought I'd get your thoughts on what the new research is saying, that China could potentially lose its top spot within 10 years. Just curious to know, how realistic do you think this projection is?
Well, my bottom line answer is I think that article that you quoted is over alarmist from the Chinese point of view. I mean, they may produce 60 to 70% of the world's rare earths each year, but it is in the refining that is key. And China refines more than 80% of global rare earths to produce the metals, and nearly all the heavy rare earths. So this is a very strong position. And they also produce more than 80% of the world's permanent magnets that are made from rare earths. So this is a very strong position. Now, it will be gradually worn away, and countries and governments and companies individually and collectively are working to develop new mines, and less so to develop new processing plants. But these take time, they take money. It is risky, it's commercially risky, etc., etc. And at the same time, China has banned the export of technologies relating to the refining of rare earth ores and the use of rare earth metals. So China is in a strong position. And I think the strong position will remain for the next 10 years, though will be gradually weakened.
All right, so gradually weaken. Are we looking at 15, 20, 30 years from now?
Well, and the key, I think, if we're looking at Western countries, North America, Europe, Australia, it takes time and it takes money to open new mines. Also, there are strong environmental and social lobbies against it. I mean, notably in Europe, we've seen demonstrations and pushback against new potential rare earth mines in Serbia and Sweden. And I think despite Donald Trump's enthusiasm for mining, the USA may still suffer from the same problem, though he may be able to alleviate it slightly. So it will take time. And the other thing about China is that because they're in such a dominant position, they can directly and indirectly control the global price. So if they've done this in the past with the mine in California, Mountain Pass, where whenever it opens, the Chinese export more, the price goes down and the mine has closed. Now, this has now changed, probably with support, direct support from the US Department of Defense, but that is always a threat. So anybody investing in a new mine or processing plant has to bear in mind the variability of the price in international markets.
Yeah, so if let's say, I mean, China, loses its hold on the market, and you talked about pricing, do you think this could trigger a new kind of competition or create some kind of a chaos in the supply landscape?
Well, I mean, the more people who can produce both the ores and refine them to produce the metals and have the manufacturing plants to produce permanent magnets and other things, the more places and countries that governments can do that, then the whole issue of rare earths being critical disappears. So, all being well, come back in 20, 30 years' time, we will not be talking about this problem. But let's see.
Now, we're talking about, you mentioned about Trump a little earlier, and the U.S., I mean, they are trying to seal some kind of a deal with Ukraine to do with minerals. And do you think, what sort of impact do you think that could have on China's position in the rare earth industry if that happens?
Well, I think, again, to my knowledge, there are not substantial reserves of rare earths proven in the Ukraine. There are deposits, but to my knowledge, they haven't been explored and examined in detail. So we don't know how much is there. And even if peace breaks out tomorrow, the country's got to get its infrastructure, its electricity, energy, and water, and everything else going before you can start even thinking of developing a mine. So I can't see this having any impact on international markets for at least 10 years. And we need to wait and see as to what the quality and size of the rare earth deposits in the Ukraine are. So I don't see this as a quick win for the US or the US companies who are going to have to invest.
And in terms of, as we're trying to transition to this carbon neutral sort of a future, what are some of the biggest challenges in building and sustaining this stable rare earth supply chain while we're pushing for that carbon neutral future?
Well, I think the rare earths is only one of many critical minerals needed for the low carbon future of the world. And I think the first, as I said, is money. You need investors, even with government backing, who are prepared to risk their capital. You need time. It takes often 10 years or more to develop a new mine. Both the mines and the processing plants provide risks, both environmental and health risk, and so have to be managed very carefully. And again, you're going to have environmentalists and local indigenous people in different parts of the world pushing back on this. And again, I come back to the commercial risks. Are you going to invest your multi-million if you think that tomorrow China might flood the market and drive the price down and put you out of business? So I think, these are the serious type of considerations that companies will be thinking about.
Right. And I thought just, before I wrap things up, just sort of go back to the start. And you were talking about, the article, and it is quite an alarmist, figure. They're saying that China losing its position in 10 years' time. But this came from the Chinese research paper, though. I mean, what do you think was the rationale for that they have that idea, whereas you think that it's not going to happen anytime soon?
Well, I mean, there are two things. They may have just a different view, or they may have knowledge of China's reserves that we in the West don't have. Okay, so there may be something going on in terms of the available reserves that we don't know about. But again, I think you look at think tanks in the West, there's nothing that draws attention to a think tank more than saying, oh, we're all going to die, something terrible is going to happen. And then you get people writing to you and giving you money to do more research. So I have no insights, but to me, and I've checked with a colleague of mine also who works on this seems slightly alarmist. Yes, there's a trend, but the idea that they're going to be out of the game in 10 years seems to be very, very odd.
Oh, okay, I suppose I have time for one more question. Who do you think is best positioned to fill the gap in the meantime? Are we talking about Africa, South America, Australia?
Well, I think the proven reserves are in North America. I use that broadly, Canada and the USA. Brazil, particularly, Russia and Australia. Those are the countries that have the proven reserves of rare earths that could be exploited relatively quickly. Africa, not a lot has been proven on rare earths, many other critical minerals, but there's nobody who is touting large quantities of rare earths in Africa yet, but that I'm sure will come.
Thank you so very much for your time and thoughts, Dr. Philip Andrew Smead, Senior Research Fellow at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. Thank you. Well, Taiwan is holding a large-scale civil defense drill aimed to strengthen its emergency preparedness. Held in southern Tainan, the exercise was overseen by President William Lai and the first of its kind under his administration. Now, it's designed to prepare the island against potential threats, including natural disasters and a military crisis. Well, more than 1,500 participants, including government officials, foreign delegates, emergency responders, and civilians, took part in the simulations of earthquakes and military attacks. The scenarios included critical infrastructure explosion and large-scale evacuation. These drills tested Taiwan's ability to respond swiftly and effectively in crisis situations. Officials say civil defense preparedness is a crucial part of national security, especially amid growing tensions in the region. President Lai emphasized that Taiwan will continue enhancing its resilience through coordinated efforts across all sectors.
我们目的是希望能够打造台湾社会的韧性，能够妥善的因应当大自然发生天灾地变的时候，又或者是重大意外事故造成大量伤患的时候，又或者是区域地缘政治的变化，我们不敢这个不准备啊。
Well, a new public tip-off channel in China to report alleged supporters of Taiwan independence has gained widespread public attention. The platform has received more than 300 reports, not even a day after the launch.
某些台独组织、台独分子、公职人员、侧翼网红充当打手、帮凶，为虎作伥，助纣为虐。 对此，国务院台办、政府网站今天推出“台独打手帮凶，迫害台湾同胞恶劣行径”
Authorities have pledged to verify all reports and hold offenders accountable under the law while protecting the identities and rights of whistleblowers. However, it remains unclear what those reported could face. South Korea has called Pyongyang's latest air defense upgrade dull, heavy, and vulnerable to being intercepted. That's after North Korea unveiled an airborne early warning aircraft that could improve its aging air defense systems.
오늘 공개한 개조된 조기 경보기는 아직 정상 운영이나 그 효용성 측면에서 새로운 평가가 필요합니다. 보시면 알겠지만 굉장히 둔중하고 또 요격에도 취약할 것으로 판단하고 있습니다. 그 내부 그 장치들과 그런 부품들은 러시아와 연관성이 있을 것으로 보고는 있고 그 기종 자체는 북한이 보유하고 있던 것을 개량하는 것이죠.
A North Korea state media reported that its leader, Kim Jong-un, oversaw the test of suicide drones equipped with artificial intelligence. He also inspected new equipment for intelligence gathering, electronic jamming, and attack systems. Pyongyang also appears to have sent another 3,000 soldiers to Russia to fight in the war against Ukraine. South Korea's military confirmed the troops were deployed between January and February this year. Seoul says that 4,000 of the initial 11,000 North Korean soldiers dispatched to Russia have either been killed or wounded. Russia has reportedly supplied North Korea with anti-aircraft missiles and other air defense equipment in exchange for their troops. Coming up next on East Asia tonight, Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister calls for tech cooperation between nations during his visit to Beijing. And OpenAI reportedly close to finalizing a deal with Japan's SoftBank that will see the AI firm's value double to $300 billion. Hello again. As promised, Roland Lim is back with the business news. And Roland, the move by CK Hutchison to offload its Panama ports, apparently it continues to have reverberations. Is that right?
Yes, Oteli. China is reportedly ordered state-owned companies to hold off pursuing any new collaboration with businesses linked to billionaire Li Ka-shing and his family. Now, that's as work on the preliminary deal for CK Hutch to sell 2 ports in Panama to an American-led consortium, including BlackRock, appears to be well underway to completion. Bloomberg says the directive, which was issued last week by Chinese senior officials, only applies to new business activities. Regulators are also conducting a review of the family's investments both in China and abroad to gain a clearer understanding of their business interests. The pause on new deals does not ban outrightly state firms working with Mr. Li's businesses for now. But it does ratchet up pressure on the 96-year-old entrepreneur caught in the crosshairs of geopolitical tensions between the US and China. If the deal with BlackRock consortium goes through, it would generate more than $19 billion in cash for CK Hutchison. The sale has drawn critical commentaries from a pro-Beijing Hong Kong newspaper earlier this month that was reposted by China's Hong Kong office. Chinese officials are reportedly examining the transaction for potential national security and antitrust violations. But CK Hutch has said that the deal was purely commercial in nature and wholly unrelated to divestments under perceived US pressure. Shares of the Hong Kong conglomerate ending the day in the green by 0.88%. That's down from a gain by as much as 3.6% earlier in the day. OpenAI is reportedly close to finalizing a deal with SoftBank. Experts say the $40 billion funding round could be seen as investor enthusiasm for a company that's seen exponential growth in light of the AI boom. Now, if confirmed, this could be one of OpenAI's biggest deals with SoftBank. According to Bloomberg, the ChatGPT maker would be valued at some $300 billion if the deal goes through. That's almost double its previous valuation from when it raised money back in October. This latest fundraiser comes a month after SoftBank separately committed some $15 billion to Stargate. That's a joint venture with OpenAI and Oracle. Sources speaking to Bloomberg have reportedly said that the OpenAI could hit a revenue of some $12.7 billion this year, and that estimate is largely fueled by the strength of its paid artificial intelligence software. But attaining higher revenue could be challenging as OpenAI continues to confront significant costs from the chips, data centers, and talent needed to develop cutting-edge AI systems. In light of the news, this is how SoftBank ended the day, 3.9% in the red, which is a recovery from earlier when it slid as much as 4.7% in Tokyo. And that'll do it for me. Back to you, Sally.
Thanks, Roland. Singapore Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee-keat has called on countries to come together to harness technology to solve challenges like aging and climate change. Well, he made the comment at an annual technology forum in Beijing. Tan Si-hui with a report.
It's a show of one of the latest and greatest tech at this year's Zhongguancun Forum. Held in Beijing, it features nearly 100 robots from 15 companies. At the event, Singapore's DPM Heng Swee Keat stressed the importance of global innovation and tech cooperation in the age of AI and automation.
We must not forget how interconnected we are. Hence, we must come together to share our ideas, resources, and expertise to harness innovation to solve humanity's common challenges. How can we better understand the human brain to help our students and workers prepare for the age of AI and automation? I think the age of AI is going to fundamentally change the human skills and competencies that we need to be able to use AI to augment human capability and not to fear being replaced by AI.
Like many countries around the world, Singapore is also facing a rapidly aging society. About 1 in 5 Singaporeans are aged 65 or older. It's a similar situation in China, but on a larger scale with 220 million seniors. TPM Heng says healthcare and social support systems must be prepared for future challenges. Mr. Heng says Singapore and Zhongguancun, a major tech hub here in Beijing, are robust innovation ecosystems crucial for quickly turning scientific discoveries into meaningful impact. As part of this effort, Singapore has been developing specialized infrastructure to help scientists commercialize their research. China has also been driving a wave of technological advancements in new areas like humanoid robots and clean energy vehicles. It hopes to continue deepening international cooperation with 100 international joint R&D projects underway in Beijing.
中关村论坛将进一步丰富成果转化、技术交易、科技投资等功能，使永久会址成为不打烊的科技大市场，为人类科技进步贡献
Singapore and China are marking their 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations this year. Over the course of his 4-day visit to China, Mr. Heng has met with political and business leaders, as well as leaders from various industries and academics. Tan Si-hui, CNA, Beijing.
On that note, it's time to wrap up Thursday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.